The Spirituality Now podcast is sponsored by Delaflor Teachings International, a spiritual and systemic coaching and consulting company with the mission to help individuals, businesses, and corporations create brilliant futures through sustainable transformation. Also sponsored by the Network for Human Empowerment, a philanthropic TV network that serves Spanish-speaking communities with free, conscious education aimed to empower individuals to become the best versions of themselves. And our podcast producer, Ascend Media, Authority Syndication, delivering premium video marketing, podcast production, and social syndication.
Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast, a podcast committed to supporting you in your journey to life mastery and personal enlightenment. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor, and I'm excited because our guest today, I really feel we have massive amount of spiritual power today as a guest in the show. She is an incredible person who I met through social media. I call it social media. I call it for me social media because my focus, the focus of our team in social media is not just to get likes, is really to influence and to elevate and to empower lives. We care for the lives, not the lives. And I got to meet Stacey and read her media and read her post, and I felt something so powerful that led me to the realization of characteristic and a gift or superpower. Many call it superpower, which should be something that is trainable muscle for all humans. But I believe Stacey has it, which is the power of resilience. And resilience is something that one of my most favorite authors in the world, Ralph Waldo Emerson, often speaks about. He speaks a lot about it in his essay, Self-Reliance, and I love it. I really believe that the self-reliance and resilience these days is needed for leadership, needed for adaptability, for change, for growing, for evolving, and actually also for doing what is right. It takes resilience, courage, and bravery to choose good instead of bad. And nowadays, what the world is going through, I think resilience at the level of how our guest is going to share it with you, it's needed more than before. Let me introduce you to her. Her name is beautiful Stacey Copas. Stacey helps shift the way people perceive and respond to uncertainty, change, and adversity. She helps people see opportunities where they once saw only obstacles. As the world is rapidly changing, people are having to do more with less, are more stressed, and have less balance in their lives. And to be fulfilled and successful in embracing the changing world, it is essential to develop resilience to see and act on the opportunities that change presents. Stacey is the author, thus, of How to Be Resilient. She's an international keynote speaker and facilitator on finding the opportunity in change and adversity. She has worked with large organizations such as Telstra, CSIRO, and Holden, and have been featured in national media including ABC, Financial Review, and The Australian, for her insights on resilience in the workplace. What makes her approach different is that she's not an academic or psychologist, and I can tell you how much I love this. She has created a framework of resilience based on the life experience of overcoming the adversity of becoming quadriplegic at 12 years old. No acronyms, jargon, or fluff. I love that. No woo-woo. Her services are frequently used for executive teams leading through change, sales teams needing the resilience to deal with setbacks and rejections without losing momentum, organizations or associations looking for a high-impact way to kick off to a conference retreat or staff planning day. Stacey is a specialist in resilience, high performance, organizational culture. She's a conference keynote speaker, overcoming adversity speaker, female speaker, keynote speaker, and so much more. She really is the embodiment of resilience, you all. Welcome, my beloved friend Stacey, to the Spirituality Now podcast.
Hello, Yvonne. I am super, super excited to be here. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, I love that you started with that. You know, I encourage all the people that we invite to have fun. I have a lot of fun. I think, you know, I named this podcast Spirituality Now because I like practical stuff and I like practical spirituality. And I really feel like the themes that your area of expertise share in the world and talking about the real things of being human, the adversities, the challenges, the changes that we go through with so much courage is far much more spiritual than me sitting around chanting for like 3 hours in a row and getting done nothing. So with that said, welcome. Let's have some fun. So Stacey, where does Stacey Copas begins? Tell us a little bit about where you were raised, where you were born. How was your first 12 years of life before you had the experience of adversity that catapulted you into your life mission?
Absolutely. So you probably tell by my accent that I am Australian, and I was born in Sydney, and spent pretty much most of my life I've spent in Sydney. And I sort of grew up I was a child of the 80s. I think was the best time to be growing up. So I had a younger brother who was a couple of years younger than me. But I was probably a little bit unusual in that before I'd even started my schooling, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And all I wanted to do was be a vet. I was just fascinated with animals. I was the type of kid that, you know, used to go and catch butterflies and collect lizards and do all those things. And I absolutely loved animals, and that was all I wanted to do with my life. And as I sort of went through my schooling, I also become quite good at sports as well. And in my sort of from the age of sort of 10 and up, I started playing softball. I was the pitcher in the softball team in the summer. And I was the first girl to play soccer for my school. And then running was a bit of an obsession. So I became really good at running, and I ended up being a representative of my school in every distance from the 100 meters right through to the cross country running. And it's just like life was pretty good. I had a pretty normal family, nothing exceptional. But normal family life, had, really good friends. I was doing really well. Academically, I'd just gotten into an academically competitive secondary school, which specialised in agriculture, which was the next step of the plan towards becoming a vet. And so sports were going really well as well. So I was at a point in my life at 12 years old where I felt like all the plans I had were well on track. I was pretty confident, and I really felt that, at that point that, anything was possible, and I just felt that things were going really well. But unfortunately, that sort of all got completely turned upside down for me when I was cooling off in a relative's backyard swimming pool. It was the 2nd of December in 1990, and it was the first weekend in summer for us here in Australia, and it was an incredibly hot day. So we were visiting my family. And my younger brother and I and a couple of other boys, we were in their pool, and it was one of those ones that sit above the ground. So it wasn't very deep. But what I did every time that I visited their place was I just liked to just keep climbing up onto the edge of the pool and diving in. And this was something that wasn't going unnoticed. I kept getting yelled at to stop. But I think we all remember what it was like to be 12 and that feeling of, being bulletproof and invincible. And so I just completely ignored that. And so I kept diving in. And then just one particular time I stood there for a moment and I thought that I was splashing too much as I was diving in. So I thought, what could I do to make a perfect dive? So I stood there for a moment and I thought, what if I hold my feet together and keep my legs straight? I thought, in theory, that would make a perfect dive. So I took a deep breath and I did exactly that. And it felt like every other dive that I'd done before until I went to try and swim up to the surface, and I found that I couldn't move. So I was completely conscious. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel like anything had gone wrong. Holding my breath, panic set in very quickly, desperately trying to get the attention of the others to try and help me, which they thought I was just mucking around. And so I held my breath for as long as I could. But then when I couldn't hold it any longer, I had to give in. And then as my lungs filled with water, I blacked out. And eventually they realised something had gone wrong and raised the alarm for help. And it was at the third hospital I was taken to later that night that I had a doctor in intensive care come and tell me that I'd actually broken my neck and drowned and that I'd never walk again.
Oh, wow. So, first of all, Stacey, I got to tell you something. You had this incident. I call it, I had a near-death experience too. Well, I call these near-death experiences, but these are actually near-life experiences. I call them not accidents, but incidents. You said that your incident was December 2nd, 1990, correct?
That's correct.
That's my birthday.
Oh, my goodness.
No, I was born, but this is amazing because I've had guests, and I have a guest that had a near-death experience on December 2nd too. So I'm beginning to feel a little bit like having a conversation with God about my birthday date, like, God, what's going on with that? This is for me, that's I don't want to make this a woo-woo thing, but for me, that calls my attention because you had this experience on December 2nd of 1990. I had the near-death experience. You were 12. I had a near-death experience where I was dead for 28 seconds. I lost an arm and I lost a leg. And they sewed it back on 1989, November 11 on 1989. So it seems to me that there's some kind of connection, Stacey. So you jumped. What impresses me of your share is that you knew. I had that knowledge also when I was around 12, around your age. But you knew how you wanted your life to be and you felt life is going on good. And then suddenly you jump, you don't notice that you break your leg and your neck, and life changes. And this doctor tells you are never going to be able to walk. So walk us a little bit. What happens then?
Yeah, well, for me, it felt like a death sentence to me because, I was an athlete and everything. I was fiercely independent. So, I went from being this fiercely independent, active young woman to then being dependent on people for everything in a moment. And it was like my identity. It's how I saw myself. It's how I saw my future was as a vet and an athlete. And, in that moment, I couldn't walk, let alone do any of those things. So, the initial period of time, it was just like, this is over. This is what's the point anymore? And that's exactly how I felt for quite a long time. And immediately after the accident, I ended up having to spend 8 weeks flat on my back, and they had like a sandbag either side of my head just to keep the neck stable. So I spent 8 weeks staring at the ceiling, and I had a lot of time to think at that time. And the majority of the time I was thinking, I was angry about what had happened and how all the things I couldn't do anymore. I was sort of thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I was, at 12, I was at, the point where boys were interesting. So it was like I thought, no boy's ever going to be interested in me again. And, so there was those sort of points of, it was all focusing on what was wrong and what I couldn't do anymore. And that was really tough. And, I spent a lot of time in that space, just really being angry and resentful and bitter about what had happened. But I kept that to myself. I didn't talk about that with other people. I had a couple of experiences with social workers that turned around and said, we completely understand what's going on with you. And I'm like, how can you understand? You're 20 something and you've just got your degree out of a textbook. How can you say that you understand how I'm feeling?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And tell me, for me, I remember when I had to be in bed for a long time and in intensive care because I had no leg, no arm. They sewed it back, right? Till this day, you can see how my arm is reattached. I cannot move the right arm. in the way that I move my left arm, but I have it's hanging